Hey guys, Omni here. We are back for another breakdown from heavy spoilers for The Last of Us, this time for episode 8, which has been my favorite episode of the season so far. It is the most tense, it is the most horrifying, I would say, and there's not an infected in sight in this episode. Oh my god, dude. They nailed this one. I was very, like, with how certain things have played out, I was wondering if, I was really wondering how they were going to bring this part to life, and they somehow made it worse. And by worse, I mean way creepier and a little more horrific than it actually was in the game, man. But with that said, let's go ahead and dive into this breakdown. If you're not subscribed to Heavy Spoilers, make sure to do so. A link to the channel will be in the description, so check them out. Let's get into this. Here we go.
Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host, Paul. In this video, we're breaking down episode 8 of The Last of Us. This is the one I've been waiting for, and David in the game's one of the most memorable characters that you come across when playing. Voiced by Nolan North, he started off as an apparent ally, but as you began to learn more about him, you start to see his more sinister side. Though bloaters, clickers, and the infected were terrifying, I think one of the scariest things for me was playing as Ellie and moving about the restaurant as he walked around wielding a machete.
Dude, I think some of the bloater scenes definitely leave their impact, but like one of the things I definitely clearly remember is like there's like two scenes in particular that always are like seared into my mind. The first time, like when you encounter that bloater at the school with Bill, and then David, like the whole scene with him in the like going around through the like seats, the tables and all that, trying to find you as you're trying to take cover in this lodge. That whole section, man, that's seared into my brain.
Normally, boss characters in games are gigantic monsters or highly skilled characters.
Yeah, this moment.
It was just something so unnerving about a 50-year-old cannibal walking around looking for you. Now, as is with all Last of Us episodes, the fact that we aren't playing the game means that they can show things from the perspective of others. In the PlayStation counterpart, you are locked to the POV of Joel and Ellie, whereas here, we can see more of David's backstory. That's how we begin as well, and we open by looking over his town, which is called Silver Lake in both the show and game. We discover David has taken it upon himself to become a holy man, and over the top of this, we hear him narrating Revelation 21. His opening line discusses the new heaven and new earth, and this very much reflects the new world that they've found themselves in the midst of. The verses in this chapter talk about how there'll be no need for a physical temple in this new world, because God's presence will be everywhere. We then jump to see him hitched up in Todd's steakhouse to watch him delivering a sermon. Todd's restaurant was what it was called in the game, and it's been transformed into a makeshift church. We see how people have tried to find reason in what's happened to the world, and you can totally understand why.
You know, I don't know if he'll make that, because a lot of the times I have a comment and he immediately follows up with something similar, if not exactly what I was about to say. But the fact that this place of all the buildings in this town for this group of cannibals is turned into a church, a temple, if you will. And the Bible describes the body itself as a temple of which they are consuming. And they're in this steakhouse, this butcher shop, this meat emporium, if you will. It's just like there's layers upon layers of this like symbolism.
Why someone turned to religion. I didn't want to spoil this episode all the way back in the first entry, but it's even possible that Mrs. Adler could have foreshadowed people going like this.
Well, that's true every day, isn't it? People out there need to get right with Jesus.
Now, religion beyond things spiritually also acts as a way to explain things. For example, thousands of years ago, people didn't understand how the world was formed, but religions gave these answers whilst also outlining the best ways to live. Thus, people flocked towards them because science hadn't given alternatives. I'm trying to explain this as best as possible as I can without offending people, but basically, what I'm trying to say is that in this once more stripped back world, you can see why people would end up becoming religious. A lot of people don't have the scientific tools to answer things, and thus preachers could provide the answers and comfort to those that feel lost. Now, Revelations is about the end of the world, and thus it's easy to see why so many people would turn to this and David after the world had ended. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows though, and due to long hard winters, David has had to resort to cannibalism in order to keep people alive. You see a sign hanging up saying, "When we are in need, he shall provide," and this is playing on Philippians 4:19, which states, "God will provide for people." This sign is also pulled over to the game, and when Ellie fights David in the restaurant, we can actually see this sign hanging up at the back of the room. Now, he's had to cross a line in order to provide, but David's hidden this from the people, whereas in the game, I always kind of got the impression that the townsfolk were aware. Now, you might
see, that's kind of how I interpreted it in the game as well. Like, it didn't, but he didn't really go into too much detail about it, but he talked about going to explain the others. We never really got to see the community. We didn't really get to see if it was more than just the handful of people that we encountered or anything like that. So I like that it gave it this just darker twist, because I think it's more menacing, the fact that he's got a bunch of innocent people that have no idea what's going on, and he's doing this to provide, versus just a whole commune of cannibals. I don't know, there's something a little more unsettling about that to me.
Might be wondering why they don't just move somewhere new. Well, the fact is that people here feel safe, and they very much control their society.
Also, the infected, they can't get around in the cold because of the fungus that runs them has issues in those temperatures, man. That's another thing. You see a lot of that in the game, and especially in Part 2.
They're not oppressed by Fedra, and the infected also tended to stick to warmer areas. Though you did encounter some in the snow when you first met David, the second game showed that the exposure to the elements left them completely frozen. You also discovered that every time they bunkered down, that the raiders eventually showed up, and thus they had to find somewhere that wasn't too appealing to others. So Salt Lake is probably the best place to be, though the cruel winters have meant that food becomes scarce. Now, interesting little tidbit for you, mate. Did you know that Vikings called it Iceland because it would put invaders off from going there? They called Greenland that because it was covered in ice, and thus when invaders arrived there, they'd be like, "F***' sake." Anyway, he goes to comfort a young...
Is that true? Is that real? I've never heard that before, but that would be some weird fuckery. Oh my God.
Girl there by saying that after
I've always wondered about that.
So there's no more sorrow. We learn this girl has just lost her father and that they want to bury him, but the ground is too cold. David calls himself her father, and it's very much a perverted version of the dad and daughter relationship that Joel has with Ellie. Whereas Joel will do anything to protect Ellie, David smacks her in front of people, and they're very much surrogate fathers at opposite ends of the scale. Anyway,
I'm getting the word. Nonce.
Yes, David is one of them, and I think that's what made the character in the game so creepy. I think this is obviously commenting on controversies surrounding the church, and going to be difficult not to offend people, but it's definitely an important thing to address. The entire holy man thing with David is something that wasn't present in the game, and I think it adds a whole new dimension to him when he's this creepy religious figure that eats people and preys on children. At this point, we get a quick cut of his right-hand man, James, and in case you don't recognize him, that's Troy Baker. He actually played Joel in the game, and Baker gave this seminal performance that I think actually helped out with a lot of the success of The Last of Us. He's a very beloved voice actor, he's played lots of different iconic characters, and I have to say...
Joker, Batman, Joel, the list is like endless, man, and this is the first time I've seen him in live action, dude, and he was so good. Like, everybody was great in this, but like it just makes me wonder, why have we never, at least why have I never seen like him in something live action, man? He had such beautifully subtle like character tics, performances, like these little micro expressions. Like there was so much being said with so little from him in this, and it just like, you know, get in front of the camera, man. I don't know if it's like a personal choice or anything like that. I know he said he really wanted to be involved in the show, even if it was just dressing him up as like a clicker or something. But like, I'm glad that they gave him a spotlight to shine, because I'm just wondering if like, has anybody given him the chance? Because he's very charismatic. Like, I've seen a lot of his interviews, and like he can just like go between voices and these performances just on a dime. But this was something subtle, and this was something very expressive, and honestly, like, as great as Scott Shepherd was, Bella Ramsey obviously is continuing to be amazing. That was surprising as hell to me. I think that was the standout thing to me.
Say that I think he completely knocked it out of the park. Now, so far on the show, we've had Marlene's voice actor playing her in the series, Tommy's popped up as Perry, and now Baker is playing James. all that's left is Ellie's Ashley Johnson, so I can imagine that she'll be popping up next for the finale. There are rumours about who she could be playing, but we'll not spoil that here. Should change the name to Not Much of a Spoiler, mate. Like the video. Anyway, Baker actually looks a lot like Joel does in the game, and hey, as much as I love Pedro, I wouldn't have minded him playing him in live action too. Look, I'm not trying to offend people again, and outside we hear how dire of a situation they're in when it comes to rations. In the game, we never saw this side of things, and after Joel fell off his horse at the university, you then cut to Ellie hunting. And whilst you were doing this, you noticed a buck that you then shot an arrow in. This didn't kill it, and thus you tracked it through the environment trying to take it out for food. It fled to an abandoned factory, which is when you found it dead, and at this point, James and David stepped forward.
Are we going to gloss over the rabbit? The white rabbit? The fake out with the white rabbit? Because we're already at this in the breakdown. Paul, what's happening? Like, because like in the game, like there's that iconic clip which has been played earlier in previous breakdowns. Like the little up close zoom in of the little snow rabbit just like hopping along, and then it's just like, swap! And then you got the crying streamer who's like, oh, it's so cute. And then when it dies, she's like freaking out, you know. Anyway, everybody's seen that clip. We get that moment where she's creeping up. Obviously, she doesn't have a bow and arrow. She's got Joel's rifle because they haven't set up her being able to, you know, do any of that. So they just stuck with what they have set up. But she stumbles upon this rabbit, white rabbit, in the snow, and then she messes up and it gets away. That was a nice little Easter egg, a little fake out there for a moment to lead us into the deer segment. I don't know. That's what I thought.
The other side of it, with James and David talking about how some of their spotters saw a deer the other day. You see how their paths now cross from both sides, and also explore the doubt within James. He's clearly wrestling with the fact that they're crossing the line in order to keep going, and adds a lot of complexity to the character that wasn't originally there. Who's pretty much just an NPC with a couple of lines, but here Baker fleshes him out, so we get much more of his thoughts.
Like he had a name, but like he was barely a character in the game.
Cannibalism in the snow could be a reference to the Donner Party, who were a group of American pioneers that migrated to California from the Midwest. They got stuck in a snowy mountain range for a while and had to resort to cannibalism like what we see here. James is starting to doubt whether this is God's way, and it's possible he knows about the other stuff too. In the game, when Joel ambushes the town, you overhear some saying that David's leadership should be put to a vote again, so this sentiment was clearly felt amongst some of the other inhabitants.
I didn't
in the game,
remember
you
any of that.
Encounter any of the kids here, but you did hear a woman saying that they were moving the children to a shelter. Now in the game, James went off and David and Ellie waited for him, which is when they were both swarmed by infected.
Yep.
You had to make your way through the abandoned factory as they closed in, and you made your final stand against some runners, clickers, and a bloater. In the game, you had no idea what was up with David at this point, and it allowed you to build some camaraderie with him. So far in the game, though you'd fought lots of hunters, the people that you'd met in cutscenes had ended up becoming your allies. This was the case with Marlene, Henry and Sam, and of course Joel's brother Tommy. It sort of lured you into this false sense of security with him, and when listening to the Kinda Funny podcast a couple of weeks ago, they did bring up a point that's stuck with me since then. They said that Kathleen might have even heard the David reveal a bit because we'd already experienced an evil leader figure. Though I don't know if that's fully the case, but I do think having two characters...
I don't know, David, even in the game, I was always keeping my eye on, you know? Like, even though he helps you through that segment, that never really, like, I don't know, it never really got me fully on his side, you know? Like, it just seemed like a nice little convenient moment. Not that it was convenient for him or you or the character or anything like that, but a way to mask that. I don't know. I don't remember, it's been a long time, but I don't believe I fell for his shtick there. But what I do like is, I do like the Scott Shepherd and his performance. I feel like, and while you can still kind of see that turn coming, I feel like his demeanor is a lot more friendly, a lot more amiable before you start to peel back that mask that he's putting on. I think that's all Scott Shepherd. I think they did a great job at disarming you with his casting, because he does have this kind of friendlier vibe to him than the David in the game. At least that's how I feel about it, and I feel bad saying that because I don't want to be like, people that look like David are sketchy, don't trust them. But it's just like the performance, you know. Anyway, let's move on.
like this in the show, hurt the fact that David was someone you came across who was worse than the infected. You don't really trust him from the start, whereas in the game you kind of did, and I kind of feel I missed that gut punch a bit, but let me know below if it caught you off guard. Now back with Ellie, we see she nurses Joel. The surroundings here are identical to the game, with him being on a dirty mattress with a couple of blankets to keep him warm. We get a shot similar to the game.
The exact same checkered blanket too.
From David. Seeing how little food they have left,
or was that
I did go back and forth over what the intention of this scene was. She does hold a snap of it for a second, and I even thought that she might be wondering whether it's worth giving it to him due to him being so close to death's door. I don't think that's what was intended, and I'm sure that the HBO podcast will probably clear this up. We do these videos before that's released, so I don't really get to hear things. Some people genuinely think I watch an hour-long episode and listen to a 40-minute podcast, and then make a 30 to 40-minute video and release it the second that the show ends, which they've discovered we've been using time travel. They've figured it out. No, but like I said, I don't think that's the intention, and Ellie decides to mount up and go hunting. Here she comes across
okay, here we go.
In the game, and I have to play this clip again, sorry.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Look, I'm a vegetarian, yeah, but still, it's a good reaction. Now, unlike the PlayStation counterpart, Ellie's pretty useless, and whereas she was taking out animals with ease and that.
Oh God, fucking coming in hot.
We see here how she's really struggling. At this point, she comes across the deer, and similar to the game, she fails to down it. We have a moment mirroring this.
Also, in the game, way more time passes between each segment too. So that does help with a lot of it.
Sniper scene from episode 6, and I did appreciate how they built off the back of that. David and James come across it, and he does the typical religious preacher strategy.
Okay, all I ask is 10 seconds of your time. I just want to
won't say it twice.
Now let's see how these scenes play alongside those in the game.
I don't see anybody. You think we can just take it?
Who's there? Come out! Drop your rifles! Now!
Hello? We just want to talk.
Any sudden moves and I put one right between your eyes.
Any sudden moves, I put one right between your eyes. Ditto for Buddy Boy.
Ditto for Buddy Boy over there. What do you want?
Name's David. This here's my friend James.
We're from a larger group, women, children, and we're all very, very hungry.
From a larger group, women, children. We're all very, very hungry.
So am I. Women and children, all very hungry too.
Well, even so, you can't drag this back on your own.
Well, maybe we could trade you for some of that meat there. What do you need?
We're not asking for charity. We can trade you.
Bella's delivery on the also hungry. Great. I love that. It was so good.
For some of the deer, we have, what do you need? We have...
Medicine?
Weapons, ammo, clothes.
Medicine. Do you have any antibiotics?
Like for infections.
We do. Back at the camp. You're welcome to follow us.
I'm not following you anywhere.
We do. Back in our village, you're welcome to follow us.
I'm not following you anywhere.
Buddy Boy can go get it. He comes back with what I need. The deer is all yours.
Buddy Boy can go get it. He comes back, you get half the deer.
Anyone else shows up?
You put one right between my eyes.
That's right.
Anyone else shows up, I put one
right between my eyes.
That's right.
2 bottles of the penicillin in a syringe. Make it fast. Go on.
Bring back 2 bottles and a syringe. It's not code, James. Do as I said.
I still love that line right there. It's not code. Get.
I'll take that rifle.
Now David is well aware of who Ellie is at this point, and as we later learn, it was his men that went to the university. Either way, they go into one of the huts, which is similar to how they camped up in the game. Here we learn a bit more about David and discover that he was a maths teacher who converted to become a preacher after the world fell apart. Not even going to go down the rabbit hole with the teaching, avoiding that, but we do learn that he came from Pittsburgh. The QZ there fell in 2017 due to a war between the Fireflies and Fedra, which is something that was sort of touched upon in the game. In the show, Ellie and Joel went to Kansas City, whereas in the source material it was Pittsburgh, where the whole Henry and Sam thing happened. You arrived there to find it overrun by bandits and could piece together enough things to learn about what happened. Fedra had been keeping rations for themselves and starving people, and when they were ousted, the bandits rose up in their place. People like David ended up leaving, and they run into the same problem when it comes to food. But the dialogue in the scene starts to transform into how it plays out in the game.
You know, you really shouldn't be out here all on your own.
I don't like company.
You know, you really shouldn't be out here all on your own.
From where I'm sitting, you shouldn't be out here on your own.
I see. What's your name?
Why?
Fair enough. So, what's your name?
Look, I understand it's not easy to trust a couple of strangers.
It's hard to trust strangers, I know, but I honestly mean you no harm.
I'd say we make a pretty good team.
We got lucky.
Well, your luck had to run out sooner or later.
Luck?
Lucky? No. No such thing as luck. Now, you see, I believe that everything happens for a reason.
There's no such thing as luck. No, I believe everything happens for a reason.
This winter, that's been especially cruel.
We didn't expect this winter to be so cruel. Nothing will grow. The game's been hard to find.
A few weeks back, I sent a group of men out to a nearby town to look for food.
So I sent 4 of our people to a nearby town to scavenge what they could.
Only a few came back.
And only 3 of them came back.
He said that the others had been slaughtered by a crazy man.
Turns out he was murdered by this crazy man.
And get this, he's a crazy man traveling with a little girl.
And get this, that crazy man was traveling with a little girl.
You see, everything happens for a reason.
You see? Everything happens for a reason.
No way, David. I'm not gonna let her go.
Lower the gun.
She is the one that killed Alec, isn't she? She didn't kill anybody. Lower the gun.
Now give her the medicine.
The others won't be happy about this.
Did you bring the medicine? Yeah, but throw it to her. David.
Move the fuck out of the way.
You won't survive long out there. I can protect you.
You won't survive for long out there. I can protect you.
Oh, thanks.
I remember experiencing this for the first time, and my
So
stomach
good,
dropped
man.
at the turn. This was a guy
It's so
you
well
just fought
done.
side by side with, and had now inadvertently revealed yourself as being one of the people that caused his town so much torment.
Yeah, after that, like, that whole scene there takes place after the whole horde thing, right? I mean, that's what he said, too. It's been a long time, but I'm pretty sure once you finally get away from the horde and settle down and you're still waiting for James, that's when he's like, all right, here we go. So you kind of, like, fought side by side. You were comrades for a hot minute, in arms. And then the turn happens.
Now they've added in a layer with the person Joel killed being the father of the girl at the steakhouse, and they of course are supposed to reflect Joel and Ellie. We see how the stories have changed too, with Joel being described as a crazy man, whereas we know from our side that they attack them. In the game, we never saw David and James's side after the conversation, but here we can see the doubt in him resurface once more as David lets her go. Now we return back to the house and again see things play out similar to how they do in the game.
All right, it was a blanket.
Joel?
I was like, there's no way his shirt was that big.
Move your arm. Oh. Here we go.
Joel, where the fuck do I put this?
Sorry. You're gonna make it.
Originally, this was the moment that you learned Joel was alive, and you'd had a large part of the game as Ellie where you had no idea what his fate was.
Yeah.
Similar to the game, Ellie lies down with him, and whereas in that we...
And I love that so much, because like you think she's fending for herself until the reveal. Well, until she asks for medicine, you don't know. Yeah, you don't know. And it just keeps you like, no. Wondering.
In the morning to see David's forces coming in, here we cut to the town. There's a lot of focus given to the meat, with people clearly knowing what's going on, but they keep it to themselves because the truth's too difficult to bear. It's said to be venison, but whether that's actually true or not is another thing entirely. James does talk about supplies earlier in the episode, but we know from their interactions that they use code with each other. They could all be lying to themselves, keeping their mind off it, and it can mirror the predatory behavior with David, but let me know what you think below. At this point, David and James arrive with a deer, and you could say they're like David James, because they saved. Bit of an English joke there, and David admits that they're the one who killed Alec, and he ends up slapping his daughter when she suggests killing them. It shows just how abusive that he is, and he tells the girl that he's her father now. The entire town sits in silence and allows it to happen. I think it very much shows the grip that he has over everyone. When things come out about figures like this, you'll often hear about how many people were aware of what was going on, but they turned a blind eye to it. It's very much the idea that you don't have to deal with something if you're ignorant to it, and no matter how horrific it is, you can reassure yourself that everything is okay. The reason I question this venison is because this could very much be carried over to the food too, and we get a lot of focus on the townspeople wolfing it down. They're happy to just tuck into their food, have a warm meal, and be quiet because speaking up's better than starving. Now we then jump back to Ellie.
Yeah, and that's why he looked over at James when they were talking about should we bury the body too. You know, their supplies were running, you know, whether or not it was code words or not. The presumption or the implication was that they were keeping the body, and then we see it later in the episode for food. So. And we know that girl's father was the body they were talking about keeping for themselves. So they focus in on her eating that soup and everybody eating that soup. And I'm pretty sure everybody's eating her dad, man. I mean, that's so messed up.
Looks slightly better. She injects him once more, and we get a slight differentiation from the game as Ellie gets to go outside, whereas in the game she spotted people coming in from the basement. We get a great scene with David and James, with the former clearly wanting to take her, even though it will only cause problems with people back in their community. David wants to spare her because he has ulterior motives, whereas James sees it as being God's will that they should leave her to die. This very much reflects Kathleen from earlier in the season.
Why? I read that not that he believes that it's God's will, but I think that was him trying to put David's doctrine back into play against him. Because like he's been kind of being a little abrasive. Again, he's very, very doubtful. Like David called him out. He's like, I sense doubt in you, young one. So like, I felt like that was like, well, maybe it's God's plan that we just leave her alone, because he knows the strain that's going to put on them. So he's trying to spin it in a way that maybe David will respond, even if he knows David's mind's made up.
You believed it was Sam's fate to die instead of getting the leukemia medicine. Either way, in both versions, Ellie decides to head out and draw them away, with us getting a big action scene. Ellie leaves Joel with a knife, and this is what he later uses to interrogate the people with. In the game, Ellie took her horse and rode through the streets as the hunters leapt out to grab her, and eventually the horse was shot and she fell down a cliffside. She then navigated the surroundings and got into a hotel, which is where she tried to escape. Here she stealthily took out hunters and eventually was grabbed by David, which is when she was transported to the camp. Yeah, they keep the sort of energy the same, but shorten things a bit, with Ellie riding out and the horse getting shot by James. David demands that Ellie is taken and alive, and I did find it interesting how he mirrors Kathleen. Her need for revenge led to her making dumb decisions, and David's need to have Ellie leads to him doing the same thing. He stops Ellie from being shot and even carries her away, similar to how Joel carried Sarah at the start of the season. The sick and twisted father figure is pretty much a reverse Joel, and he's arguably the most dangerous person we encounter in the whole show. That's outside of one of the other characters, but moving on. Now in the game, once Ellie's captured, we then switch perspectives to see Joel like what we get here. When you first took control, you were stumbling about and a little worse for wear, which is like how he appears here too. The tension from the scene comes from the fact that Joel is almost out of it, but he manages to get the upper hand and take down David's men. Now the death scene here is terrifying, with a lot of the struggles feeling like they're ripped right out of the game. The facial expressions especially are something that I always spin the camera around to see, and I guess we've discovered that I'm a bit of a psychopath.
What the fuck?
Please subscribe. Now from here we get the interrogation scene. I was so happy seeing this playing out, as I was thinking that the scene with Graham Greene was going to be the show's version of it. Might have spoiled the scene for you if you watched our breakdown for that episode, but I genuinely thought that's how they were going to play it. The Disney interrogation was how I thought they were going to play this scene. Now, because they're so similar, you might be asking, why have they done something that's basically the same scene as that? Well, it's for a good reason, as here we're seeing the true side of Joel when Ellie's not around. In the cabin, we knew nothing was going to happen, as did the couple, because there was a little girl here. They were likely aware Joel wouldn't do anything, which is why they ended up laughing. Here though, Joel is free to do what he wants, and he'll do whatever he wants to get Ellie back. Now let's play the scenes from the game and show you how stuff lines up.
Oh, leave him alone. Oh. You're next. Oh, please. I don't know any girl. Is she alive? What girl? I don't know no girl. Jesus! Marco. No. Fuck! Focus right here, right here. I'll pop your goddamn knee off. You focus right here, or I'll pop your fucking kneecap off. The girl. She's alive. She's alive. Where?
Oh, I forgot about that David's newest pet. So these guys that did know. Ooh. See, like these little things. Like I've repressed, I guess, a bunch of the icky aspect of that dynamic from the game until I did. If you guys stuck around for the review portion of my reaction, I did actually go back and rewatch those scenes and kind of refresh myself on it all. And I was like, oh my god. So it was there, but not like to this extent. But then there's this line that I completely didn't take into consideration because it wasn't one of the scenes I went back to.
The town! What town?
That delivery, man.
You're gonna mark it on the map. You're gonna point to where we are and where your resort is. And it better be the same exact spot your buddy points to. And it better be the exact same spot your buddy points to. Mark it. It's right there. You can verify it. Go ask him. Go ask him. He'll tell you. I'm not lying. I ain't telling you shit. It's okay. No. I believe him. No.
It's so fucked up, man.
That's all right. I believe him.
No, wait! We also get a follow-up from this with Ellie, and a moment that builds upon the original.
I know you're hungry. Been out for quite some time.
Oh yeah, and in the game, there's just a full-on torso just on that table. You know, we get the little ear, but like...
What is it?
It's deer.
For what it's worth, this is just deer meat, I swear.
It's just the deer meat.
You're a fucking animal.
You're gonna chop me up into little pieces.
So now what? You're gonna chop me up into tiny pieces?
I'd rather not.
I'd rather not. Please, just tell me your name.
Please tell me your name.
You're so full of shit.
If you want to judge me...
Judge you? You're eating people, you sick fuck!
It's awfully quick to judgment. Considering you and your friend killed how many men? It's the only way I'm going to be able to convince the others.
Convince them of what?
That you can come around. You have heart. You're loyal. And you're special.
You're smart. Loyal.
Oh.
In the life we could build.
Jesus.
You stupid little girl.
You little
What am I supposed to tell the others now?
Let's see what I go tell the others now.
Ellie.
What?
Ellie.
What?
Tell them that Ellie is the little girl.
Tell them that Ellie is the little girl who broke your fucking finger!
Broke your fucking finger!
How did you put it? Tiny pieces.
How did you put it? Tiny little pieces?
Ellie realizing they're cannibals is so chilling because they mistake, and it was a mistake getting Ellie caged like this. This picturesque last resort in the world has turned into something where people have turned to cannibalism as a last resort. And
what did the frustrated cannibal do? He threw up his hands.
David recognizes the violent heart within Ellie, and he even talks about how cordyceps showed him the truth of the world. It feeds and protects its children,
and it takes us back to episode 2.
I realize at this point that the religion thing's a charade.
Well, I mean, in the podcast, they do go into that as well, talking about how the cordyceps is a community in and of itself, and that does take care of itself and propagate and love, which is what that scene was meant to convey with Tess when the cordyceps was rooting into her brain before she lost complete control and detonated everything like she was trying to do. That was the cordyceps in her reaching out to make that connection with the rest of the hive.
And that he lets others believe it because it brings them comfort. However, it also brings people closer to him, and though he won't admit it, it allows him to be propped up. Now, the cordyceps loving is something that the show's creators have talked about on the podcast, and even said that they had the kiss with Tess to hammer home this idea. Love is laced throughout every aspect of the show, and we've seen both the positives and negatives of it. You have people like Bill and Frank, and the couple in episode 6, but then you have people like Kathleen and Joel, who it just causes pain for. David has a sick and twisted kind of love, and when he's assaulting Ellie later on, he creepily says, "Don't be afraid, there's no fear in love." Now, the cordyceps have very much made him believe that his sick and twisted view of the world is the right one, and it's a chilling way to portray the character. Although his plan with Ellie fails, it's likely that he would have got her into the camp had things not gone awry. Everyone was just silent about him. I doubt they would have spoken up, and thus he probably could have got her as one of the members. Taking out Joel would have helped him because he was the only person defending him, and I doubt the other villagers would have been like, yeah, Ellie's my friend, especially after this stuff with the university. Thus, Ellie would have been alone, and what people tend to do in abusive relationships is that they get people away from their friends and family. Thus, they have no one to fall back on, and with this safety gone, they can fully manipulate the person and control every aspect of their life. Now, back with Joel, we see as the storm rolls in, and he makes his way to Salt Lake. This is a similar thing to the game, and at this point you're able to mask your movements by using the environment. Now inside a hut there, he discovers belongings and bodies hanging up, which is similar to what happens when you enter one in the game. You find Ellie's backpack, which is ripped right out of it too, and he realizes just how much trouble she's in.
I'm surprised he didn't blur that. I might actually blur that just to be safe, just because YouTube and that sort of thing has gotten a little sketchy. He's got a little more power than I do. Paul over there with his subscriber count and all those connections. So I'll play it safe. But it was a bunch of bodies, cold, chilling, hanging out, having a good time.
The episode in general, it reminded me a lot of the movie The Road, in which characters also come across cannibals in that. Also,
Never seen it.
It's important to bear in mind that James is comfortable doing this with the chopping board,
Wait.
probably because he's helped
Have
David
I?
kill people like this before. In the game,
Hold up. The Road. What am I thinking of? Okay, yeah, okay. I always get this and one other movie confused. I have seen The Road. That's a really good movie, though. But, like, I always get the name of it mixed up with... I can't remember what the other one is at this point.
Even refers to Ellie as David's new pet, showing how he views her. And we then get Ellie's escape in another scene that's ripped right out of the game.
Wakey, wakey. Come on.
Let's go! Stop!
I warned you.
Wait! Don't do it! Please don't do it! Please don't!
You had your chance.
I'm infected! I'm infected!
Really?
So are you.
And now so are you.
Really?
So are you.
Roll up my sleeve. Look at it. Look at it!
Right there. Roll up my sleeve. Look at it!
I'll play along.
What'd you say?
What did you say? Everything happens for a reason, right?
Everything happens for a reason, right?
What the hell is that?
No, she would have turned by now. This isn't real.
She would have turned by now. It can't be real.
Looks pretty fucking real to me.
Looks pretty fucking real to me.
Now you might be asking whether Ellie biting someone can actually infect them, and there's a bit in the second game that clears this up. I'll talk about that in the super spoiler section, but we do kind of know the answer to it. Either way, they cut the sections down here and compress the scene so that Ellie goes immediately into the restaurant. In the game, you made your way through the town and jump back and forth between Joel and Ellie. I think it's actually smarter to handle it like this. We see Ellie throwing a burning log, which ends up setting the place on fire. In the game, as you went to escape, David grabbed you, and eventually this knocked over a lamp, which then started the blaze. There's several lines from the game are pulled directly across here.
No way out, Ellie. The doors are locked, and I have the keys.
Nowhere to go. You want out? Gonna have to come get these keys.
Now, Ellie burning down this quote-unquote church also symbolically shows how she's burning down the facade of everything David's built. The pair battle it out with one another, and the struggle ends up being exactly like how it is in the game.
Yep.
Let me tell you something. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Stop!
Fucking touch me!
It's me! It's me! It's me! Look! It's me!
Yeah, Ellie in the show is way more emotionally vulnerable. I'd say that Fed, like, she fends for herself quite well, and in the game aspect, and like they kind of like brought Joel and Ellie down a little bit and like made them more vulnerable as human beings, both emotionally and physically. And I like that it makes the tension a little bit higher. Because Ellie, I mean, they both trained with Fedra from a young age, but Ellie retained so much of that in the game to kind of aid in with a lot of the traversal elements, with the way that it kind of parses out the story as well. It's one of the reasons why she can fend for herself decently enough without Joel, to not be completely reliant, on top of the things that he's also taught her about being outside the walls and stuff like that. Whereas we see that progression, it's almost like Ellie didn't really pay attention to most of the Fedra training, and very much so didn't. And we saw that a lot with the way she was being goaded and coached and stuff by the officers there, talking about how she's, she has the potential to be this officer like the rest of them and all this stuff, but that she doesn't take any of it seriously, and that kind of lends her to be like just more ill-equipped to survive without Joel, which is what makes this so traumatic and powerful, is seeing her step out of this. And I think that's just the difference between them. While Ellie here, when Joel shows up in the game, does start to kind of let that out and break that this almost happened. She comes out of survival mode and is allowed to go back to being that little girl. Ellie is just in that zone and freaking out, and she's all erratic, and it's a lot. I don't know. I think both are very real. It's just because they were built up as characters very differently between the two iterations. That this performance is just it's got its differences. It has its similarities, but it has its differences as well. But dude, Bella looks like they're fighting for their life in this moment, intently. It's almost as if this isn't an act, and it's so good.
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. It's okay, baby girl. I got you.
During David's death, we keep the focus on Ellie, and it shows how much overkill she's giving to this wicked and evil man. Joel comforts her, and we get a really important line dropped here where he calls her baby girl. This is the same nickname that he gave to Sarah, and at this point, he's all in on this being his daughter. The pair walk off together with his arm around her, and this is a complete opposite to how they were in episode 2. After Tessa's death, Joel stormed away, leaving Ellie, whereas here we see them closer than they've ever been. The pair have bonded over everything, and whereas she once was just cargo, here he's putting a coat around her to let her know everything's okay. But that closes out the episode, and we once more get a shot of the pair walking away. This is imagery that's often used in the show and game, and it stages the characters are going on the next part of their journey. Now before we get into the spoiler section, I'll give my review, and I thought this episode was really solid with some great performances in it. Scott Shepherd brought a lot to David, and at points, he was even creepier than Nolan North. In the game, things are a lot more implied, but there was some extra lines of dialogue that they added which really freaked me out. It was also really nice seeing Troy Baker too, and he gave a lot away from just minor facial expressions. Guy looked completely beaten up at points, and his meek performance made me think that he very much represented the town's citizens who refused to confront David. I think this episode worked really well as an evolution of Ellie as well, and it's no coincidence that this is the chapter in the game where you first take control of her. Like that section, this is very much about her having to fight to survive without help from others. So far she's relied on people like Fedra, Riley, Marlene, Joel, Tess and Henry and Sam, but this is her showing that when she's cornered, she can handle things that come her way. You also see that the character is realizing that this world isn't as fun as it's cracked up to be. Going back to that opening in episode 3, we've seen how she thought wielding a gun was something cool and also exciting. Here though, we have her smashing David's head in like it's a like button, and we see the relentless anger that she carries. Huge change in dynamic and her growth as a character. Now as for what I didn't like, you already know what I'm going to say, and I think the show has continued to underuse the infected, which has taken away from some of the most memorable scenes of the game. I think if we had something with David where they had to fight some of them, it it would have made that turn as impactful as it is in the game, and with the episode just being 45 minutes long, I think we could have easily have gotten another 10 or even 5 minutes where we had something like that play out.
There is an overwhelming underuse of the infected in the series. Like, I feel like we can all agree to that. But, like, I don't think we needed it in this episode. Personally. This one.
I'm guessing that they've pulled back on showing the infected as much because of the budget, but every week it seems like there's a major moment involving them which is left on the cutting room floor. Minor nitpick, and yeah, obviously the game's there if you want to see more of them, but I did kind of want an action scene like that with Ellie, so we could see what she was capable of against humans and also the infected. And that takes us into the super spoiler section, and for the next part of the video, I want to go over some of the Easter eggs that will probably give the game away. If you don't want things spoiled, then thanks for watching. Thanks a lot, mate, again, for wasting 40 minutes of your life. And I hope to see you back for the finale next week. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the interrogation technique. In part 2, Ellie also ends up using this, and we of course needed to see her actually see it for herself in order to explain how she knows this. We also discover that Silver Lake is a resort rather than just being a town. I wonder if this line was thrown to show how resorts have changed across the country, as part 2 ends with Ellie going to a resort on the hunt for Abby. This was controlled by slavers, and you can see how these holiday locations have been twisted in this new world. And lastly is Ellie buying David. Was he infected? Was he not? We don't fully know. However, Ellie does end up kissing Dina in the second game, and at one point she also bites Abby when she's fighting her in the theatre. As we know, Abby doesn't get infected, and thus I don't think that Ellie's bite actually could infect people. The infection seems to have stopped at her arm and not made its way to her saliva glands, and thus I don't think she passes it on.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think Ellie actually infected David, and either she didn't know.
My question, though, is if she cuts her arm on that spot where the cordyceps entered her body, are they still alive there? Because that could just be the scarring or the dead fungus just permanently there. Like, the scar remains, but is it alive there? So, like, if you cut that where she got bit, and then that blood gets onto somebody, or even maybe the spores or the tendrils or whatever, as it is in this, under the dermal layer, gets onto somebody, is it alive to then infect people? We've never really explored it that deeply, but I'm curious if that would be the case.
Or she used it as a weapon. Throughout the series, she's been told to hide it from people, but she pulls it down in this moment to further sow doubt and confusion. This throws James off a bit, and it adds upon what he was experiencing before, allowing Ellie to escape. Anyway, that wraps up the video, and huge thank you for sticking with me until the end. I know I made a joke about it before, but asking you guys to sometimes give up 40 minutes of your life to watch these things is a big ask, and I appreciate you for sticking with me through it. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and now I'd love to hear your thoughts on it in the comment section below. We are running a competition right now and giving away 3 copies of the Rocky 4K box set on the 15th of March, and all you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. We pick the
Go check them out, man.
End of the month,
enter in for the Rocky 4K set.
Then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers.
Hell yeah, man. All right, man. Fantastic breakdown. Like, I do think that the infected have really not, they're not wholly, like, I don't know, how do I dance around this? I didn't feel their absence in this one because in the game, at least in this section, I felt like David was the prominent threat. So discarding the infected here to focus on David felt fine to me. I know, like, the whole cabin thing, that is definitely a moment I recall from the games, is holding out there and running from the infected and fighting them off was an intense section, but I don't feel that it itself doesn't further the story. There are elements, however, where the encounters with the infected also kind of grow and evolve what's happening or help accentuate certain moments. Like in episode 2, very pivotal. And then, of course, I feel like episode 7 was one of those where I would have liked a more prominent infected presence. And then there's episode 5, where it's just like, boom, infected everywhere. I think that was like our infected quota pretty much for the entire series. So yeah, I do wish, because the infected in this series is just so iconic and memorable that I wish that they were more utilized. But I do love the moments where they come up, and I like the focus on the characters. There's just a little bit of me that's just like always wanting to see, just be reminded that they're out there. Because we go so long without seeing any of them. So it just kind of almost, as long as it makes it seem like if you stay away from the major cities, they're not a problem. And they kept saying, just because we're away from the cities, that doesn't mean infected aren't out here. And yet we still never see any infected while we're out here, though. It's just like a thing. Like, not everything needs to be a set piece or anything like that, but like, I don't know. It feels like the infected aren't really an issue if you just stay away from everything. Anyway, loved it. Everybody gave phenomenal performances. David is an icky man, and they made it even worse. Everybody did a fantastic job. We need Troy Baker and more live action roles. And yeah, man, this show's so good, and I can't wait for next week to see how they bring this to a close. But guys, what do you think? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Make sure to subscribe to Heavy Spoilers and enter into their little sweepstakes as well if you're interested in that box set at all. Before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Manny Sherritt, Ryan Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, Yori Korscott, Margaret Grace, Melito, Robert Aguiado, Raven McGann, Jeffrey Hale, M. Sephiroth, Jake Cantrell, Josh Lee, and Aaron Myers. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, everybody.